I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I believe in only two things completely, the First Amendment and boobs.
Joining me today is the host of Outkick the Coverage on Fox Sports Radio and a man who has never been let down by boobs. Clay Travis, welcome to the Rubin Report.
I'm happy to hear that's the best introduction I've had in a long time.
That is your introduction.
Yes.
I knew there was only one way I could do it, and it was going to have to be about boobs. You like boobs?
I do, and the First Amendment, both. And in fact, when I showed up today at your place, I had on my Boobs and First Amendment shirt that we sold a lot of after my appearance on CNN. And I'd like to say that it was some grand viral attempt to create a stir. And it's not like I'm beyond or above that, certainly. But no, I've been saying that for years, writing it, saying it for years. And say it to men, say it to women. And I certainly didn't think it was going to turn into the viral sensation that it did.
Yeah, but it did turn into viral. Yeah, I saw you were trending on Twitter. That's like basically the highest compliment that anyone can get these days. The outrage over it. So in a second, we're going to show some of Brooke Baldwin's reaction. When you said it, truly, did you have no sense that anything was going to happen? Because I saw a lot of people say, you see what he did there. You see, he purposely did it.
I said it on Headline News the day before to a female anchor. I have said it on my radio show probably 100 times. I've written it in my columns. It's such like a kind of a words that I'm used to saying that I just went to it because it's part of a natural argument there. And once I saw, like, remember when I'm doing that show, and you'll know this, but I think a lot of people listening and viewing will not. I was doing that from my home studio. So I can stare like I'm staring at you right now. I can see how you react to everything that I say. But in my home studio, I have no monitor. So I don't even know who the other person is that I'm talking with. I can just hear their voices, and I can't see her facial reactions at all. But as soon as she reacted, I knew what she was doing. I knew there was somebody in her ear saying like, oh, this is Trump's America. You got to go after this guy, Clay Travis. He's a misogynist. He's a bore. You know, you got to put him in his place. And so what I do for better or worse is when people want me to like hit reverse and back up and apologize, I put the pedal to the metal and go forward full steam. So I doubled down. I tripled down. I may have even quadrupled down. So once that happened, I knew what she was trying to do. That was her producer in her ear saying, you got to stand up on behalf of all women or whatever. You know, some clearly artificial reaction on her part, I think. Because it really kind of torpedoed the entire segment.
Well, it did.
I mean, unprofessional from her, frankly.
Well, the other guests then sort of bought in on it too. He pretends, and then I think you or at least one of your fans unearthed some of his old tweets where he said so. I mean, the idea that liking boobs has become misogynistic shows you how bananas the whole debate has gotten.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's not like women are surprised that men like boobs, right? Like, cosmetic surgery is a big business. Victoria's Secret.
We're in LA right now.
Exactly. Cosmetic surgery, the Victoria's Secret has revolutionized the bra industry in the last 30 years, like golf clubs, right? The new technology that comes out. So women understand that boobs are attractive to men, right? So it's not like it was somehow like this crazy thing to say. And then she was like, I can't believe you would say that to a woman. I'm like, I would say it to a man. For better or worse here in large extreme, and my wife would say this too, I talk the same to men and women. And so to me, expecting that I would change the way I'm going to speak because a woman is interviewing me, I would talk to her that if you were a woman right now, I'd be talking to you the same way. To me, that's sexism. You know, I try to treat everybody the exact same. What may not be great, right? People might say, oh, Clay Travis an asshole, but he's equally an asshole to everybody if you want to criticize me for that, right?
You're so right. That's what I used to say about gay marriage. It's like you got to let people be equal so that you can treat them as shitty as everybody else. If they don't
have to be as miserable as my wife is, right? They deserve that right.
They absolutely do. All right, so real quick, we're going to show just the 45-second or so reaction from Brooke, and we're not going to do an hour. We can do an hour on boobs, but we're not going to. But let's just watch that real quick.
And I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. B-O-O-Z-E or B-O-O-B-S? Because as a woman, I'm
as in boobs. I believe completely in the First Amendment and in boobs. Those are the only two things I believe 100% in this country. And by the way, Jamel has absolutely nothing to do with her background at all. Did you notice that? He went straight to that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did go straight to that.
Why would you even say that live on national television and with a female host?
I say it live on the radio all the time because it's true, and that's what I do. Because I like boobs and the First Amendment, which is exactly what I said.
Listen, Brooke, I think that speaks for itself.
So the fake outrage, that's the interesting thing to me, and you already hit on this a little bit, but she most likely had somebody in her ear saying, you've got to stand up for women and all that stuff. Did you realize what was happening while it was happening?
Again, the challenge is I don't see the reaction. Yeah. But I knew, when she comes back to me and says, spells out boobs, like, again, I had the opportunity to back up. But at that point in time, I meant what I said. It's not like I'm going to say, I apologize. Let me throw myself into the fetal position and beg for the forgiveness of left-wing America who's perpetually outraged now. Yeah. And in fact, I knew that I was in for a battle. And I've said this before, but I kind of like being in the center of media storms. I feel like there's a certain peace that comes over you when you're in the middle of in the arena, literally fighting in the moment. Yeah. I love it. It reminds me when I was a kid, Brer Rabbit, the Brer Rabbit story, like, don't throw me in the briar patch. Yeah. I love being in the briar patch. Or you hear pigs, like, don't get in the mud with a pig, like he likes being in the mud. I like wallowing around in the mud. So I knew as soon as she cut the interview short that it was going to be a viral sensation, right? And I'd been in enough of these situations where people choose sides automatically, and they like, Clay Travis is awesome, Clay Travis sucks, bravo for CNN, CNN sucks. I know how sort of bipolar the reaction is going to be, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately got on Twitter and tweeted out, CNN, could have been ESPN too.
We'll get to ESPN in a second.
CNN just cut my interview short because I said I love the First Amendment and boobs. I don't remember what the exact tweet I said was, but I sent that. And then I immediately got on, the benefit of having all these media apparatus ready, I immediately got on Periscope and Facebook Live and told my side of the story and took it to the next level and said, by the way, we're going to sell First Amendment and boobs t-shirts, and we're going to donate the proceeds to breast cancer awareness, which just throws everybody into an uproar, right? I mean, because and then I think I was ahead of the media storm, and I knew the media storm was going to come. And at that point in time, you can't check your phone, you can't even check Twitter. It's just an onslaught. But what I did love was I got a call from CNN asking me to come on Monday. Right. And so then I tweeted, like, CNN's not outraged, they want me to come on Monday as well. They left me a voicemail, so I played that voicemail the next day. CNN denies that they left me a voicemail, says that there's no truth to it, and then late that night I get a text message saying, hey, this is not going to work. But I will say this, and I've told this story maybe once or twice, but my wife is downstairs because I do everything out of my house. And right before then, I'd been saying, okay, I've got to do this one more interview. It's been a busy week because that had been a really busy week for us. It was Friday, and I was like, we'll be done in the afternoon. We'll chill. We'll go out. We'll take the boys out for pizza. Just have a chilled night. Yeah. And it's 2:30 in the afternoon, my time, whatever it is. I do that hit, and my wife just texts me from downstairs. Never good when you get texted by your wife from downstairs, by the way. Didn't even bother walking upstairs. Right. Do I need to put the house on the market? Because my wife's fear, and I think there's probably a lot of spouses who have lived through this, is that when you're in this middle of this perpetual outrage machine, at some point the mob wins, right? And my argument is I'm going to fight the mob for the rest of my life. I like it. I enjoy it. I think they're wrong and I'm right. Mm-hmm. But I think her fear is at some point they're going to come for you and they're going to scalp you and they're going to win a fight. Yeah. And when she saw that, she was like, this is going to be bad for you. They're going to typecast you as a sexist. They're going to say you hate women. And my argument was, I know that's not true. And accusations or insults levied against me that I know aren't true, if you want to say I'm racist, sexist, misogynistic, whatever else, you can call me whatever you want. To me, I've called myself worse, and I probably get called worse by the people that I live with. On a regular
How did that conversation go with your wife? Because that's serious. I mean, that's serious stuff. I get it. I understand what that is.
Yeah, I mean, look, she is we watched, and I had to go back and read, because Howard Stern's an idol of mine. So you need to read what his wife went through. Imagine what life was like for him in the early 90s. To me, when you're trying to be as honest as you possibly can, people say they want honesty, but a lot of times they don't really want honesty. They want the fluff. They want the, racism is bad. Sexism is bad. They don't want you to actually dive into the nitty-gritty of details and figure out what the facts are of a situation. And I've always said that, maybe this came to me in law school. I remember a criminal law professor I had who said there are three things that matter about every case: the facts, and the facts. Mm-hmm. And for what we do, I always find that there's so few people who actually look at the facts, the original documents of a story, look at the basis for what they're basing their opinion on. And in this world that we live in now, everybody's decided what they believe, and a story happens, and everybody just uses it as an excuse to justify whatever they already believe. Mm-hmm. Facts be damned. And I feel like I'm in the rarity, you're in the rarity. You sit back and say, okay, let's actually look at the details here and figure out what the story is before we decide whether it fits our worldview or not.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I think, for guys like us, and I think that that these ideas at least are becoming the silent majority, is that in our cases, we both are two-time Obama voters.
Yes.
I was a progressive.
I worked on Al Gore's presidential campaign.
Right. So we've done that. Like, it's not, because after this, what interested me so much wasn't just okay, the boobs comment. It is what it is. You know what I mean? But it's the reaction after the manufacturing of CNN, the PR team inviting you on, then Brooke saying no, he's banned forever. But just this machine versus the guy who is invited on, says a line that he always says, but then you took the power back because you're like, I'll periscope the truth, I'll play the voicemail, but then you also have to deal with all the family shit and all that, and it shows you there's a certain David versus Goliath thing that I just love about this.
It's totally true. And look, when I also went back, if you watch that clip, the other guy who was on there who claims that he's offended by what I said has sent all sorts of more ridiculous tweets. And my audience, that's the other good thing.
That's a beautiful thing,
and you've got
right?
this too.
Yeah.
The people who support us love us, right? And that is very gratifying, because when you're in the war all the time, when you're in the battle every day, it's good to know there's some people who have your back. And they may not be able to have your back in the same public way that you or I can, because this is what we do for a living. But there's so many people out there working at companies with serious jobs that are worried about being out there in the arena fighting because they got to protect their family. They got to make the mortgage payment. They got to do everything else. But I think it's gratifying to see them saying, hey, we support you here. But yeah, they went back. I didn't do it. They went back and looked through all of his tweets and started popping me with, look at what this guy said. And then they go back and they find the same thing with Brooke Baldwin. Don Lemon's on there talking about how great Kathy Griffin's rack is on with her. He's coming on to show his nipples on New Year's Eve. She doesn't react at all to that. Kathy Griffin says nipple like 6 or 7 times.
And nobody cares. That's the point. Nobody cares.
And to me, from a journalistic perspective, and I'm far from a journalist in a grand scheme, right? I'm an opinionist. But when you have the discussion going on, to me, where she made the biggest error is, and it was great for me because it went viral, millions of people saw it. We sold, lots of shirts. We raised a lot of money for breast cancer awareness. It was all positive for me. But to me, where she failed is she had an opportunity to have a serious discussion about a substantive issue. And when you react to a word, which in no way needed to be reacted to, I was on to the next argument, right? It was just part and parcel of my larger argument. She allowed that segment to be derailed in a way that it didn't need to be.
But isn't that so consistent with everything that this set of people is doing these days? Like, if she would have just let it slide, or even just, it could have been a 3-second, maybe that was the wrong word kind of thing, and then moved on, then this wouldn't have all happened. But what happened after? The truth is, Clay Travis is bigger. So as you've said here, the fact remains, this all worked to your advantage because you like being in the fight, you know how to do it and all that. But what does that tell you about just the general state of media, but also sort of what's happening with the left? That they so go over the top that they end up strengthening all. I mean, this is what they're doing with whatever the alt-right is or the white supremacists these days or all that. It's like you keep building them because you need them in a bizarre way.
Yeah, they need it. And they also are devouring. It's like a snake eating its own tail, right? The left devours itself. It seems to me is what is going on here. But you create all of these mountains of, there have always been racist people. Like I go back in time and say, it's amazing to me that in 2017, while we're talking, the stock market is at an all-time high. Unemployment is at an all-time low. The per capita income of the average household has never been higher on an inflation-adjusted basis in the history of our nation. Those are 3 really magnificently big facts that should mean that people in the country are pretty happy. This should be like the late 90s, right? Like Bill Clinton was in charge getting blowjobs from interns. People were like, I wish he hadn't gotten a blowjob from an intern, but stock market's rolling, like everything's kind of good. He hasn't taken us to war.
I didn't mind the intern blowjob, by the way.
What was funny was I was in GW at the time, in George Washington in undergrad, and one of the guys that I knew, it's really funny, it was even funnier in social media era, but he had been hooking up with Monica Lewinsky. So it's funny, like think about the president's selection and who he's having an affair with. She's also sleeping around that same time, maybe not the exact time, but with a random college guy, right? At least JFK was having an affair with Marilyn Monroe. right? Like she's probably
we're probably going to find out a lot more in the next couple of days because they're going to drop these JFK
there's no
files.
Telling. Maybe that was the reason he got assassinated. But like at least he was like with the most famous woman in the world at the time. That's kind of what you would want your president to have an affair with, right? Bill Clinton's having an affair with a random girl who's living in her mom's apartment in Watergate, which maybe speaks to Bill Clinton's ability to connect with everybody.
Maybe speaks to Hillary Clinton's lack of desire to have sex.
All sorts of things that could hit with. But to me, this is actually a really good time in the country. And so I just don't buy into this, the world of fear. And I think there's so many people out there that are wrapped up and encapsulated by their fears every single day, right? They're afraid that they're going to be, that there is violence lurking everywhere. And I know murder is up in the last couple of years and everything else, but I just think it's a pretty good time to be in America today. And of all the times that I've been in the country, like this is the least racist. This is the least sexist, right? I mean, things are moving in the right direction. And I feel like the left wing is making it such that people who might be natural allies, like you or I were, like out there fighting for things, progressive ideals, they're making me take a step back and be like, I don't want to be on this person's side. If you're banning To Kill a Mockingbird because the N-word is in it, I don't want to be on your side. Like, that's not a battle that I want to fight on your behalf. And I feel like they're alienating a lot of middle-of-the-road people, not just conservatives, but lots of middle-of-the-road people. I consider myself to be a very middle-of-the-road guy. And the left wing has totally turned me off.
So I completely agree, obviously. And I consider myself to be pretty center. And, I have... Every week I have someone in here that I agree with on some stuff and disagree with on some other stuff. I've literally never sat across from someone that I agreed with on everything.
Brilliant, right?
You know what I mean? Oh my God. We must be the Aristotle and Plato of our time, I guess. So you mentioned right before we started your wake up, because as we said, you worked on the Gore campaign, you voted for Obama twice and all that. So
donated money to John Kerry.
There you go.
Worked to try to help get elected a black guy running for the Senate in Tennessee, which you want to talk about a Sisyphean task. He lost to Bob Corker back in, I think it was 06. And
I'm guessing you did it not because of the color of his skin, but because you liked his ideas.
Because I thought he was a better candidate than Bob Corker was. And look, like I worked in Democratic politics for 3 years while I was in college. I was on the Hill with Nashville's congressman. I'm born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I did all of those things. I got fired off of the campaign to replace this guy, Bob Clement, by Jim Cooper, because I wrecked his wife's Volvo. This is actually a pretty funny story. After my first year of law school.
That's some serious campaigning.
After my first year of law school, I was madly in love with my girlfriend, then girlfriend, now wife. And she went off to college. She decided she didn't want to be a lawyer. We met in law school. And she went to New York for the summer to dance with Alvin Ailey. Talented, like went on to be a Titans cheerleader. That's where the outkick the coverage phrase comes from, right? I ended up with a girl a lot better than I deserve, like a lot of people probably who are watching and listening right now. And so he wasn't a congressman yet. He was a former congressman who had lost the Senate race to Fred Thompson. He was running for the Nashville seat, Jim Cooper. And so he had a health scare. He actually had colon cancer. They found like a colon polyp or whatever it is, and he had to have surgery. And so he was off the campaign trail. I was his body man. I went everywhere that he went. So that was a cool kind of ground floor introduction to politics. And so when he went away, he was going to be off the trail for a week. I decided to fly to New York City to go surprise my girlfriend, now wife, spend the weekend with her, hanging out in New York City. Middle of a horrible heat wave. She was living in this dingy, awful, literally like not much bigger than this table, right?
Probably like the same building I used to live in.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of people who are young and in college and are in New York City for the summer. So we're up there hanging out, and I flew into Islip because Southwest Airlines from Nashville was so much cheaper than flying into LaGuardia or JFK would have been.
I'm a Long Island guy. So I know Islip well. Yeah.
So I flew into Islip, and you had to take the Long Island Railroad into the city, the LIRR, right? And so I'm going back on Sunday, and that Sunday they had a massive, I think it was like a gas leak, and they shut down the LIRR. So you couldn't get to Islip. Unless you had, I don't know what a cab cost back then, like $200, which might have been $200,000 to me at the time, right?
Right.
And so I had to they turned everybody around, went back. I didn't get back in time. He shows up several days early to start campaigning. And at the same time, I had also just wrecked his wife's car, his wife's Volvo. And so they fired me. So that was the end of my political career. I was 23, but I was working on a Democratic campaign. He's still a friend of mine. But Yeah, so it wasn't just that I voted Democratic. It was like I literally gave what I think is almost the most sacrosanct of everything that you can give, my labor on behalf of getting these people elected.
It's so funny because I said to you right before we started, I was like, when I started, I wanted to do what you do. I mean, I wanted to be like a sports center anchor, be talking sports all day. Now I'm talking politics all day. It's like you were doing more political stuff. Now you're talking sports, but you're talking politics all the time too.
They've intersected, and I'm sure we're going to get to that.
Yeah, so
like inescapable.
Yeah, let's get to that because I talked about it a bunch with Whitlock and Jason Whitlock, and he really crystallized it for me because I am starting to see this as a major danger to society. I agree with you on the hopefulness part right now. I agree there's so much fertile ground for ideas. Even the people who have ideas that are completely against mine, 180, fight for them. And guess what? They are fighting for them. I think they're the wrong ideas, but as long as we're not killing each other, I think this argument is good.
The marketplace of ideas is good for America.
I'm all about that. What I do think is actually dangerous, though, is the inability right now for us to escape the fight, which is why I try to take weekends off social media and all that stuff. But for you, a guy that's in sports to me, when sports done right is the most beautiful thing ever based in competition, and it doesn't matter where you're from or what religion you are. It's beautiful beyond just the athletic part of it.
And the janitor can get together and talk as equals about sports in a way that I don't think happens in any other part of American life today.
Absolutely. Or anytime if you just go play pickup basketball, you don't care what color anyone is. Can they play?
Yes.
Can they play? That's it. But this thing where they've become so intertwined now, for you like both, so I get it's probably pretty cool for you, but do you think at a societal level that there's something kind of dangerous going on here?
Yeah, I think in general, because I think that what I talked about before is sports is a connective tissue that I think binds many people in this country who would otherwise have nothing else in common. And I speak from somebody's perspective who is from the South, right? I grew up in Nashville. SEC football, if you are in the 11-state football region, the 11-state SEC teams are in, is the tie that binds. The first book that I wrote, Dixieland Delight, was about why people love SEC football so much. And it unites across racial grounds, at least in my generation. Obviously, it was a big part of why the South in general got integrated, because if you believe the stories about Bear Bryant, he decided, you know what, we got to have some black guys on the team because USC came down to Alabama and kicked their ass with Sam Bam Cunningham. And the famous line, even though it may not be 100% true, is that in 60 minutes, Sam Cunningham did more to integrate the South than anybody else had done in 200 years, right? Because people love football so much, they said, wait, we got to be better. And we got to have the best people regardless of where they're from, regardless of their color, regardless of their religion, anything else. And so I think what's happened is, you go from there to the Michael Sam, the Caitlyn Jenner, the Colin Kaepernick era, and we can talk about all of those, but those are all, to me, things that take us outside of the field of competition. And Michael Sam is a fascinating one because I think the NFL is the ultimate meritocracy. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter whether maybe you can even read, right? If you can get on the football field,
actually, in cases,
if you can get on the football field and make it more likely that a team is going to win, then a team will find a place for you. And I think starting with Michael Sam, a lot of people in sports, when they showed him kissing his boyfriend, and like I'm a pro-gay marriage guy, right? Like I am. People always say like I'm pro-choice. I am anti the death penalty. Like I could run through all my list, right?
Yeah, we should probably after this story maybe we'll do that. Yeah.
But like things that I don't think necessarily you'd be like the Politico said, oh, Clay Travis is a hero of the alt-right. I don't know what that means, but I'm like, are there tons of people who are pro-choice out there in the alt-right, right? Are there tons of people who voted for Barack Obama in the alt-right? I mean, I think it's a funny kind of creation of a media falsehood there. But
the second I saw that headline, I do want to talk about that article for a second, but the second I saw the headline, without even reading it, I knew. I was like, I know exactly what they're doing, and here we go. But let's pause on that for a second.
Yeah, and so I saw with Michael Sam, I said, what I saw immediately was, this is not similar to Jackie Robinson, okay? Because Jackie Robinson could not escape his race. Moreover, everybody by looking at him knew what his race was.
Yeah.
Michael Sam, more power to him for being gay and being comfortable coming out. I hope he's having a happy life. But the NFL fan doesn't care about Michael Sam being gay. Unless Michael Sam is a great football player, moreover, the average NFL fan doesn't care about Michael Sam at all.
Yeah.
If you cover football, you cover guys who make the team much more likely to win. If you're just a distraction in terms of you're not making the team more likely to win, then nobody's going to cover you.
But is there an inherent problem with that, though, at some level, that if these guys, if no one is out, then it's incumbent on them. Someone's got to do it first.
Right.
And it's like, on some level, should it be the star of stars who's going to potentially then create all sorts of problems for the team and all that media stuff? Or should it be the guy that might be about to be cut and then he doesn't want to do it? So there's like a little bit of a tough spot there. I think it certainly
is a story, but I think the way it was covered as if people really cared.
Right.
If he were a great defensive end who had 20 sacks a year, then the profile pieces on Michael Sam, I think, would have made sense. The fact that he decided that he wanted to go public with the fact that he was gay, I think a lot of fans started to say, okay, I feel like I'm watching the NFL to see whether or not my team's going to win, not to make a societal statement. And look, I don't think people who disagree with gay marriage are awful human beings. There are a lot of people in my state who don't believe that people should be able to get married if they're gay. I disagree with them, but I don't think they're horrible, racist, bigot, awful human beings. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. The vast majority of people who went to my Southern Baptist church probably would have that belief, right? Yeah. I don't think they're awful human beings. I know them pretty well.
You know what you can do is talk to them.
Yeah, right. And try to persuade them that they're wrong in the marketplace of ideas.
I know.
Instead of
science.
immediately attacking them, right?
Yeah.
And so, but to me, that eye-opening moment for me was Mizzou. And the University of Missouri, for people who don't know it, this was like kind of everything that I care about coming together. SEC football. I remember being on the airplane flying back from LA where I was working with Fox Sports, and my Twitter feed blows up. And as all these people out there talking about the fact that Missouri's football team has said they are not going to play unless the demands of this guy who are hunger striking and the other Black Lives Matter activists are agreed to. And everybody on Twitter is amazing. Just about everybody is saying, so brave of the Missouri football team, so brave of Gary Pinkel to support them. This is a massive moment in the world of sports. We're seeing the power of athletes raising their voice. And my first thought was, okay, all that's fine. What's being protested? Mm-hmm. I understand. I've been on a college campus. I've been in Missouri. I've talked to those kids there. It doesn't seem like a fundamentally racist place to me. They had a gay black student body president. They had embraced Michael Sam. It doesn't seem like a school that has an inclusiveness or diversity problem. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, what are the issues? 3 things that brought about this protest. 1, the student body president, allegedly when he was off campus, somebody yelled a racial slur to him from a red truck. No idea who it was.
Yeah.
May have happened. Sucks if it happened. No witnesses. We don't even know if it happened. But I went to GW, right? I went to school in Washington, D.C. When I was on college campus, if I had gone to the president of the student body at the time, and I had said, hey, when I was walking off campus, somebody came by, and I've got a couple of my Jewish friends, and somebody yelled an anti-Semitic slur on us. You need to do something about it. He'd be like, that's life. You're in a big city. People are not always going to be nice to you. You know, I wish that nobody was anti-Semitic in this entire city of Washington, D.C. Probably people who hate Jewish people, gay people, black people, white people. Right? There's a lot of hate that exists in the world. When you're off campus, that's not my responsibility. So that was one.
And you just can't manage all that stuff. I mean, that's the other piece. You just can't. You can't manage humanity.
Even the idea that you should go talk to the president of the school because somebody allegedly said something mean to you when you were off campus. Right. Like all of the things that the president of the university has going on.
Yeah.
I've been arguing for a while that we need, instead of like all these inclusiveness ideas and everything else, there should also be a counter example here where the person who makes the most ridiculous protest has to walk around with a poster board that says, I'm a gigantic pussy, all over campus. So everybody can know, like, you had the dumbest thing to complain about on campus this week. Right?
Well, the Women's March people like those pussy hats.
Yeah, right.
So you could probably just get a pussy hat.
No doubt. You can just walk around in a pussy hat, and that's ideal now. So that was one of the things. The other one was a poop swastika.
Yep.
And this is just a funny creation in and of itself, because we don't know. Like I said before, if I had shown up here and somebody had shown up and they had been like, Clay Travis, I'm a huge fan of yours, and they had handed me a portrait of me done in poop, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is an endorsement of me. I'd be like, that's a really fucking psychotic thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know. Like when I hear poop swastika, I actually think that's probably somebody who's not a huge fan of the swastika, and or how crazy would you have to be to use your own feces to make a poop swastika, right?
So this is a mental health issue more than anything
Probably, and we don't know who did it.
Right, so that's really the issue, though, is because virtue signaling has hit that fevered pitch to the point that we know that a lot of this stuff is hoaxes.
Yes.
I mean, we simply know it
happens
to be true.
every day. So it could have been anybody. It could have been a Jewish guy who did it. It could have been a Jewish girl. It could have been a black person who's in the protest that did it, right? They have mental health issues. The third one was somebody walking through campus who was not a student said a racial slur. They shut down the University of Missouri over these 3 things. The football team said they weren't going to play. And so I dove into all these details. I wrote about it. And I covered it pretty aggressively. And I was stunned that I was the only person in the world of sports media who was approaching the story of the Missouri protest by actually looking at the facts and saying, you know what? I don't think that these activists on campus who want the university president to stand up on a table in the university cafeteria and denounce his white privilege is really, like, when you looked at the list of the demands that they made. And yet, these protesters were covered in such a positive way that the president of the university was forced to resign, and the overall chancellor of the University of Missouri was forced out. And since then, enrollment has dropped 35%. The university, in many ways, has almost died.
No.
Well, that was just a couple of years ago. And to me, that was the first moment for me of really kind of diving into a media story, because it was in my wheelhouse. It was SEC football. It was a Southern university that I was familiar with. It was sports, and it was, a political protest. And I said, my God, there was no basis in reality for this. What should have happened is the media should have looked at this, pointed out how illegitimate it was, that Gary Pinkel's response was actually rooted in cowardice, not bravery, that the football team's decision not to play was rooted not in an understanding of a legitimate protest, but just kind of like a viral form of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only person saying it. And since then, it was like all of a sudden I pulled, like the world was like taking the pill in the Matrix, right? Like an analogy that I've used.
Yeah.
You take the red pill, and suddenly you start to realize how much that surrounds you is bullshit. And that was the first story where I really noticed it.
How quickly did the rest disintegrate for you? Because I've noticed with people, and I actually had a girl on here who you'd probably really dig. Her name's Candace Owens. Her Twitter's Red Pill Black, and that's her YouTube thing. And basically, she was a lefty her whole life. I think she's in her late 20s now. Basically came out as a black conservative, did a really funny video coming out to her parents as a conservative. But basically what she said is once she saw it, it crumbled really quick. For me, because I try to be so measured with everything, it took a little while. Like, it was, people watched it happen to me over the course of a couple of years, because I kept trying, I kept going, it can't be as bad as I think it is.
I think people have seen me evolve, because I'll get people now who say, like, oh, I used to listen to your show and you wouldn't ever be involved in stories like these. And to me, what I kind of found was, if I'm not saying it, there's not anybody saying it, right? That's still what's kind of remarkable about what I do in the world of sports, is I look at facts and I talk about facts, and almost nobody else is doing it. And so it was kind of a gradual thing. I could point to that. The Caitlyn Jenner decision, I was like, it seemed to me ESPN, I still believe, gave her that award so they could get an exclusive with Diane Sawyer. They put it on ABC. I'm like, you know what? I mean, I understand the purpose of heroism. One of my family members is trans. Like, if it makes you happier, do it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that, to me, bravery requires risk of life or liberty. And I don't think that Caitlyn Jenner risked either. And so the idea that she was incredibly heroic, I didn't necessarily buy into.
Well, she was also an athlete 30 years ago or whatever, 40 years ago, basically, right? Like,
when I see Kim Kardashian on the front row at the ESPYs, I'm like, this is a total ratings ploy. ESPN's full of shit in the way that they're talking about this. And then as this kind of progressed, the Colin Kaepernick thing, but before the Colin Kaepernick thing happened, we had the Ryan Lochte story. Mm-hmm. And to me, and the Peyton Manning story. Peyton Manning mooned a trainer 20 years ago, and suddenly he becomes an incredible example of white privilege. And you go back and look at it, and the woman who accused him was out to lunch. Like, she was crazy. She was calling people at all hours of the night. She wasn't a reliable witness. And the example I use is, we're in this weird place where if a minority says something happened, or a woman says something happened, you have to believe them, or else you are racist or sexist.
It's not just believe, you have to bow to it forever.
Yeah. And so my argument is, I like to go back to Kill a Mockingbird, which now is getting banned in the state of Mississippi because of, it's insanity, right? We're in like a book burning era almost, it seems. But in To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch puts Mayella Ewell on the witness stand. And he aggressively questions whether or not she was raped. And as by virtue of that aggressive questioning, we find out that she made up the allegation that she was raped by a black man, Tom Robinson. The jury still convicts him because that's the broken system of Southern jurisprudence in a pre-civil rights era. But it's a powerful moment because that's why we have an adversarial system. You don't automatically assume that somebody is telling the truth because of their race or because of their gender. And we have so swung, I believe, from an era where a black guy's automatically guilty in the South because he's black to a black guy's telling the truth because he's a black guy, or a woman's not telling the truth because she's a woman to a woman's telling the truth because she's a woman. I think you have to look, and this is I can't believe I have to say this, but I think you have to look at the facts of every individual case. I think that rape happens. I think it's awful. But that doesn't mean that I think every time a woman says she was raped, it's true. I think that racism is awful. It shouldn't happen. But that doesn't mean that every time somebody says something racist happened, that you have to believe it. Michael Bennett's case, it's mind-boggling to me that I'm like the only person who covered the Michael Bennett case. The guy lied about his treatment by 3 minority police officers in Las Vegas. And again, all these red pill moments, the Ryan Lochte, the Peyton Manning, the Michael Bennett, the Missouri.
The Bennett thing one was particularly interesting, though, because the story, the second it all came out, the story just disappeared.
Yes. The media didn't cover it.
What just happened?
And I have what I would say, like Hemingway said, a writer has to have a natural bullshit detector, right?
Yeah.
And also that, you see like the iceberg, but you don't see everything underneath the iceberg. Well, maybe it's the legal foundation, the legal training, also my fascination with stories. But I feel like I can see a story and believe whether or not it's likely to be true based on the way it's told. Now, that's because I think I would be a good trial attorney, right? I can sit down, ultimately your storytelling contest. Who can tell the more believable story? Michael Bennett's story on its face when he put it out did not make sense. And since we know like what the Las Vegas police responding to a real shooting is like, but there was a report of a shooting in a crowded casino. And Michael Bennett said that as they arrived for that report of a shooting, they decided to grab him and harass him and violate his civil rights because he was a black guy. Well, that didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, wait, there's a report of an active shooter in a casino, and these cops who are arriving on the scene with that information make the decision to suddenly decide to be racist against Michael Bennett at that exact moment while they think there may be thousands of lives in peril and an active shooting going on. They clearly thought that he was behaving in a suspicious fashion. That's what I think at the get-go. I didn't know at the time they were 2 Hispanic and a black guy. I hadn't seen the videos, but that's kind of, I say it, my life kind of changed in one way, I think, when I did a ride around. When I was in law school, I'd encourage everybody out there who's listening or watching now, follow a cop for a night. Just sit in a car with a cop and see what they go through. And I think you will have so much more respect for the difficulty of their job. And so I have a lot of respect for the difficulty of a police job. And so when I was kind of like going through this process, I looked at it, and then we had the videos come out and everything else. Basically, he's proven a liar on video.
Yeah.
And nobody covers it.
Suddenly it disappeared.
And then this one also is crazy to me. We praise athletes for saying things that are dumb. Right? Nobody, and the reason why athletes keep talking is if you give somebody a cookie, like if I give my kid a cookie and tell them they did something good, they're going to keep doing it even if they're doing something stupid, right? Like that's what athletes are like right now. And so every time an athlete speaks out, people praise him. LeBron James said last year, every time his son leaves the house, he worries that he might get shot by a police officer. And everybody's like, so brave of LeBron James to come out and say this. You look at the data. LeBron James' son is 5 times as likely to get hit by a train and die as he is to get shot by a police officer when he leaves the house. If LeBron James had said, every time my son leaves the house, I worry that he's going to get hit by a train, everybody would have been like, LeBron James lost his mind, right? But people believe fundamental untruths because nobody actually goes into the data and looks at it. And so all these athletes, and Colin Kaepernick's a great example, Colin Kaepernick drives me insane, the whole Colin Kaepernick protest, because when he started protesting, he was protesting something that he wanted the government to do, which the government was already doing. He said he was upset by the killing of innocent minorities by police officers, and he wanted the government to help make it stop. Barack Obama is the president. Loretta Lynch is the attorney general. They're already aggressively investigating every one of the Trayvon Martin, of the Michael Brown case, all of the stories they're already investigating. So the analogy I use is Obama could have just thrown Kaepernick under the bus and been like, I'm glad that he's protesting, but we're already doing exactly what he wants us to do. The analogy that I use is basically Kaepernick walked into McDonald's, took a knee, said that at 11:30, said that he wanted breakfast. The manager of McDonald's comes back out, says he's not going to stand up till he gets breakfast, and says, actually, we serve breakfast all day long here already. But you would think that Colin Kaepernick was Rosa Parks, the way the media has covered him.
Well, that's why also it's so strange to me that people don't hit on what Jason Whitlock was so succinct about, which is this is all a business. At the end of the day, none of these owners of the teams or the general managers or any of these things. Yes, again, are there racist people?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we wish they didn't exist.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we will fight to beat their bad ideas.
Yes.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if you own something and your employees are doing things that are hurting the bottom line, even if you're for the protest, if that protest means that enough of your fans aren't buying jerseys, aren't showing up to games, you're a businessman. You're not a magical societal puppeteer or something.
And people don't understand that. And the analogy that I always try to use analogies because people understand better because everything has become so charged if you talk about it in a sports context. So what I say is, what would you think if you had a package coming from UPS or FedEx, and when the guy showed up for the UPS or FedEx package, he had on a Make America Great Again hat, and he said, hey, hope you vote for Donald Trump. Be like, man, I don't think it's good for UPS's or FedEx's business. Or he could have had a pussy hat on, and he could have said, hope you can vote for Hillary Clinton, right?
Right.
Either direction. Or if he drove off in their car and they've got a bumper sticker that supports a political candidate one way or the other. A police officer, if you got pulled over for speeding, a police officer came up to the window and he said, like, hey, got you for speeding, here's your ticket. Oh, by the way, Mitch McConnell's an ass, don't vote for him. Right? Whatever you're saying.
Right.
You'd be like, it's not appropriate for somebody in a police uniform or a military uniform or a UPS or a FedEx or a McDonald's or a Walmart to be expressing political views while they are in uniform on their job. Everybody out there would be like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Then why do you think Colin Kaepernick should be able to do it?
Yeah.
They've got, especially now in a social media age, players have the ability to get their political beliefs out to a larger audience than has ever existed before. People say, oh, he's a modern day Ali. Oh, it's like the 1968 Olympics. Ali was not an employee. Boxers are self-employed by and large. He was not getting a paycheck signed by an owner every week. And the athletes at the Olympics at the time were amateurs. They might have been representing their country, but they weren't representing anything other than themselves. If you think that it makes sense for an athlete to alienate half of his audience of the businessman, I think you're crazy. People are ripping Jerry Jones. I think that's pure insanity. Ultimately, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before we even went on. Most people have no idea how they get paid today.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a divorce between athletes understanding that fans ultimately pay their salary. And they pay their salary by watching their games, by going to their games, by being engaged in the overall storylines. And so to me, when I saw the Colin Kaepernick story, I was, again, it's the red pill moment. Like, how in the world are there so many dumb people trying to cover this story and doing such a poor job of it?
Yeah, and ironically, it's not even that they're all dumb. They're just trying to manipulate other people for clicks.
I think it's that, and I think there's also a genuine fear that you're going to get fired if you say anything other than somebody alleging racism is a hero. I mean, I think that there's a lot of white people. If you want to criticize the diversity of the sports media, there's no diversity of thought, first of all. 96% of people did not vote for Donald Trump. It's almost impossible to find somebody who admittedly voted for Donald Trump that writes or talks about sports. And also, there's a lot of white guys. And even if you are conservative in your mindset, and there aren't that many to begin with, there is a fear that if you go out and do what I did, if you say these protesting Missouri students who are predominantly black, if you say you think they're full of shit, well, that means you're racist. Why? I think people who are full of shit regardless of what color they are. And that's why I look at the facts. And, sometimes, there is legitimacy behind a complaint. I said that I thought Ezekiel Elliott getting suspended was ridiculous. Didn't have anything to do with the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's black. Had to do with the fact that the NFL, I think, had poor evidence to support his suspension. So I go to the real documents, I look at them, and as a result, somehow I've become the most controversial person in the world of sports.